We were talking about the old days binging on DVDs back when Netflix... I've been a Netflix customer since...
Day one.
Yeah, since VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And so remember the red envelopes on the...
Yeah, I remember they would send you a DVD in the mail and you'd have to wait 3 days.
Right. So this would have been, I don't know, about the year 2000. I heard about a show called The Office in England. And that sounds funny. And I watched it, and I watched another, and I watched another, and I think I got 2 DVDs to begin with. And I looked up, and the weekend was gone. I'd piled up in bed. Now, there's nothing unusual about that now, 20 years on. But the idea of sitting in bed and watching 20 episodes of a show was I was the Rosa Parks.
You were a pioneer, yeah, yeah.
So what did you stream? No, we were talking about Sopranos. What'd you say?
Oh yeah, so I mean, Sopranos was a show I fell in love with. I thought it was absolutely magical and amazing, and I didn't get HBO at the time, so I sort of started renting the DVDs. And my buddy Dave and I used to go down to Blockbuster Video, and
those devils. Netflix was pretty cool back then. They had the moral high ground compared to Blockbuster.
They did.
You'd lose a disc, and they're like, who cares?
Yeah.
Lose a tape or leave on a vacation, or your kid puts it under a shelf somewhere. You're out like a car payment.
Exactly.
For renting Rad.
Yeah. Good movie, Rad.
Yeah, I got people there.
Yeah. But what we used to do is we used to watch, we'd go down to Blockbuster right when they open at like 10 in the morning, and we'd rent 2 discs and watch all 6 episodes. And then we'd go back to Blockbuster at like 4 p.m. and we'd be like, sorry, we rented the wrong 2 discs. Can you, we wanted to get discs 4 and 5 of season 4 and not 3 and 4.
So when you went back to do a 9th step, on that, what did that look like?
I still owe them one.
Excellent.
I still owe them one.
Yeah, there used to be a Blockbuster over around the corner here. We can go check and see if there's still there.
I could try to hunt down some former employees.
I knew a fellow who was doing his 9th step, and one of the entities he had done wrong was Radio Shack, and he told his sponsor said, "I'll go with you for moral support, whatever." Oh, would you? Thank you. They go into Radio Shack. And the sponsee says to the fellow behind the counter, "I need to talk to Randy. Is he around?" He goes, "Yeah, he's in the back. Go get him." Guy disappears. The sponsor leans over the counter, grabs something, stuffs it in his coat pocket, and he's got the look on his face that you've got right now. and so the guy makes his amends, and they're gone. Left the store, and he turns to his sponsor and goes, "What in the hell was that?" The sponsor goes, "Hey, I'm not going to drink over it."
Well, to each their own, man. That's
to each their own.
Yeah.
What an asshole.
Oh my God.
But it's funny.
It's hilarious. Is that a true story?
To best I know.
To best you know.
You know what? Yeah, it's fifth hand by the time it gets to you, but I trust the guy that told me.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I know that I have had to direct sponsees to make an amends to
companies,
Exxon or something.
Yeah.
It's like, because why? Because they used to shoplift their smokes there back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, they live in a different city now. And my move is to go on to huge corporations' website and find out what charities they support.
See, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Yeah, I still, there's a pizza place back home where I grew up that I still owe.
Where's that, Jeff?
A financial, back in California, Northern California.
I associate you with New York, but you're a Bay Area. What's up there?
Okay, so I grew up in the Bay Area. You associate me with New York because I moved here from New York. Lived in New York for about 4 years before needing to forcibly remove myself
Look,
from the toxic.
It's bad to be the town drunk, especially if your town is Manhattan.
Yes. Yeah. It got pretty bad out there. And
if you're in Liberty, Kansas, you're not doing so bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. More people would know who you were in Liberty, Kansas. I still had some, it's that guy. But, I could just be a jackass in different parts of town.
Here, I grew up in Texas, and I did my worst drinking in the early 80s. And it was still dry counties. And
man.
And a thing called blue laws, which I won't take time to explain, but it was real restrictive, kind of Baptist-influenced liquor laws there. And there was a little town, it was little at the time, near North Dallas where I'm from, and all the liquor stores are up and down each side of the street. You know, people were coming in from 5 states to
load up.
buy their booze. So that was the liquor store row, like there is in so many cities. And I didn't, I thought I had invented this system until I got sober and heard people talking about it. Well, I'll go into Red Coleman's on Monday, and I'll go into Centennial on Wednesday, and I'll go into Owl Liquor on Friday, because I don't want the guy to think I'm a drunk. These are people who sell liquor for a living all day long.
I used to have my excuses ready, like, I got a dinner party, and they're asking us for vodka tonics as I buy a bottle of vodka for myself.
Right. The guy never looks up from his Archie and Jughead comic book. He's just ringing it up.
And I was never buying tonic water or limes or anything else. I was just,
Well, we live now here in Santa Fe, and there's a lot of rich people here with wine cellars and Scotch collections and stuff. Buddy, I assure you, that was not me.
Oh, yeah.
I had a pint of the cheapest
jet fuel you could find.
Vodka in the glove compartment, which in Texas in the summer, I can't tell you how hot and awful this stuff was. And I never cared if... I don't know about oak barrels and hops and aged this and that, just squirt it down my tonsils and get drunk.
Oh, totally. And for me, towards the end, the worse it tasted and the more it hurt, the better. I actually liked to sort of have it feel like I was punishing myself a little bit.
You know what? Never put that thought together.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I always kind of respected a gin drinker, because to me that stuff tastes like gasoline. I wouldn't drink it on a bet, unless that was all there was.
That's actually when I started to realize I might be an alcoholic, because I actually started drinking gin when it was the only thing around, and I hated it. So it's like, what am I doing? I can't stand this stuff. Maybe I have a problem because I'm actually suffering through it.
So did you do like college theater and stuff like that before the drinking got real bad? What's your timeline there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I never really drank in college. I mean, I did a little, and I guess there were a few episodes that maybe I drank, quote unquote, alcoholically in college, but I never drank in high school. I was never...
I see.
Yeah, I grew up in an alcoholic household, so ever since I was a kid, I always vowed to never grow up to be that.
Were you already acting by then?
No, I didn't get into theater. Senior year of high school is when I started doing theater. Fiddler on the Roof, and I got cast as the lead. It was my very first play ever, and
Tevye.
Yeah, I got to play Tevye.
I didn't even. Yeah, I did know you sang, but I haven't seen you sing. I haven't seen you do musical theater. I guess
Yeah, I don't really do it much anymore. Never really did much of it, actually, but it was a very magical experience. I loved being on stage. I loved the camaraderie of the cast and the energy, and oh my God, we're creating this scene, and it's just such a special thing. Actually, it really lit me up. I felt like I was a Christmas tree that just got plugged in. It's like, oh my God, this is my calling. This is my, I was just turned on and glowing brightly, and went to college not expecting to study theater.
Where?
Upstate New York. Excuse me.
Oh, that's where my wife is from.
Oh, yeah.
Rochester area.
Okay. Skidmore College.
She did a SUNY or two. She went to more than one college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do one when you can do more, right?
But you also studied in England? London? What's that?
Yeah.
I read that part. I didn't know that.
So, yes, I went to college in upstate New York, and was studying theater out there, and studying music. I was a music and theater double major. And then my junior year, I studied abroad in London for the first semester, and then I was going to study music somewhere else the second semester, but I loved London so much that I stayed in London for the whole year, and fell way behind in my music major.
That's fantastic. So
yeah.
what year are we talking?
This was 1997, 98.
Okay, and you were there how long?
The year in London. And only within the confines of academe, or did you do
commercial theater there as well?
Oh, man. No, I was just studying.
Okay.
Although, that was when I first got there, it was summer of '97, and they were filming Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which is arguably the worst addition to the Star Wars.
I'm not adept, but that's the Jar Jar Binks deal?
That's the Jar Jar Binks deal. He was in a few of them, but that's the one. And they were actually looking for extras, and they put out an international call, or just on their website. My buddy Matt found it, and I sent them a very funny letter that sort of cracked them up, I guess. And
nice.
They called me and they said, "We want you in Star Wars." And I was an extra. I was a stand-in. So I got to have breakfast with George Lucas and with Jar Jar Binks. And
stop it.
Yeah.
So I don't know George Lucas. He would just elbow into you at the table there and join you, or what do you mean?
I just sat down at a table, and he came down and sat at the table I was at, and we talked about the San Francisco 49ers. And
right. Oh, look at you got an in.
We had an in, yeah, Bay Area connection, and yeah, it was cool. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to get discovered, and of course that, didn't happen. But
so are you drinking to excess in London now?
No. When I was in London, my drinking, I would go to the pubs, and yeah, we all kind of get a bit hammered, but I was never the guy that drank more than anyone else. I wasn't drinking every day. I was very much able to, after classes, sit at the pub, that very romantic idea of reading the textbook with a pint on the table, and it would last half an hour, Yeah, so no, I wasn't drinking to excess yet. That didn't come really until I graduated and I moved to Los Angeles, and I was bartending, and I was, occupational hazard, drinking five drinks a night and loving it. And then that's where the...
And doing plays?
And doing theater, yeah. Doing plays and playing in a band, doing a lot of music. Getting pretty hammered at rehearsals for with the band. We were all pretty heavy drinkers, and but yeah, it didn't really start to hit me until I was about 26, 27 is when I began, I think, drinking alcoholically.
Was it a problem that was drawing negative attention from bandmates and at gigs and stuff?
Not really, no. Luckily for me, I had that ideal setup that I think alcoholics often find themselves in, where there's always someone who's a little worse right in your orbit. And our drummer was a very heavy drinker, and I was nowhere near as bad as he was. So I didn't have a problem, did I?
I was the one they could hide behind.
You were that guy?
I was your drummer, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at one show, someone sort of pointed it out. Me and my bass player, we were doing shots, and ordering a shot and a beer and a shot and a beer, and someone else was like, "You guys drink a lot," and it's like, "No, we don't," and all that justification that comes along with it, and it was just a celebration sort of environment that night. And
did it hurt your heart? Did you feel like your secret was getting exposed?
It did.
Yeah.
It did. I remember it because of that. My friend Dave, who didn't drink, probably because he was, in recovery. He didn't work a program, but he quit drinking because it was a problem for him. My friend Dave, he quit drinking because I think he was an alcoholic, and he didn't work a program or anything, but...
No, people quit.
Yeah, he just quit. But he came up to us and was sort of like, "You guys, you were drinking a lot that night." And it felt like someone was shining a light on something I wanted to keep in the dark.
Yep.
And this was sort of at the, beginning of when the problems started. Like, this story was kind of at the beginning of that chapter. But, I wound up flying out to California. This was when I was living in New York now. I bottomed out in New York. So my New York chapter is the last chapter of my drinking. And I flew out to California to do a play in the Bay Area, a play called Rabbit Hole. It's a gorgeous play that I've always wanted to be part of, and I got offered a part. A friend of mine was doing it north of San Francisco, and I was drinking every day. I didn't know anybody in this little town. I didn't have a car. All I had was, rehearsal at night and a world of loneliness and just wandering the streets during the day. And, there was I missed a rehearsal. Like I just got absolutely hammered one day at like 2 p.m, and I don't even remember what happened.
Yeah, that hurts. That'll hurt your heart, make you very ashamed.
Yeah, it brought up a lot of shame, and my friend who I was staying with discovered me drunk and had to lie to the director and say I just wasn't feeling well. And all that stuff. And I thrashed her house a little bit. Like I accidentally fell through a screen door, and it was real bad. And it didn't get me to stop. I mean, I was addicted. You can't stop, but it was all about drinking, but trying to maintain it. And I was during that performance, I was drunk on stage. I was buzzed, not fall down drunk, fall through a screen door drunk like I was at her house, but slurring words a little bit in my recollection, and no one called me on it, but it was a real dark chapter for me. And this is, my art form, and I love the theater, and I love being part of an amazing story, and the script is incredible, and the cast was incredible, and just the whole, I'm letting you all down, and I know it, but I need to hide it, and I can't even begin to be honest with myself about it yet. It was very scary. And
the old early AAs had a word for that. It was called the clamp. Did you ever hear that?
No, the clamp.
The clamp. When you know you got to stop, and that you're probably looking at a spiritual solution, and you can't. That friggin' addiction is no joke. When it no joke. In you. So that place, gotta stop, can't stop, is called the clamp, and it's agony. Some people they never get it. They die with it.
They die with it, or they spend 20 years in that clamp. And I was pretty, I think, lucky because again, that was when I was in New York. Then I went back to New York, and I was also heavily into cocaine, and that just exacerbates every negative trait that I have, and my spiral downward was very steep and very quick.
Yeah.
So once that clamp period started, it was only another couple years before I was needing to get sober, and I'm really grateful for that. Playing in the band, there was some problems, and my girlfriend at the time would sort of say, like, you're coming over drunk a lot, but I could justify that away, and it wasn't, I wasn't getting arrested yet. I wasn't,
So did you come into the rooms under your own steam, or was it an intervention? Yeah,
it was an intervention. My mom and dad were actually out there in New York visiting me, and they found a stash of cocaine. And I tried my best to justify that away, and oh my God, this was like pretty much the darkest it got, all the lying about that.
I happen to know your dad. He's such a groovy dude. That hurt in my heart just to hear. Oh boy.
My dad is the biggest sweetheart, and he's in recovery too, and thank God for that. And it's sort of funny because all the pain that his drinking caused me as a kid is the thing that saved my life as an adult. Because if he didn't have recovery, if he didn't have a 12-step program, if he didn't have 10 years sober, it might have gone, I think, differently for me, so... Yeah, I was getting trashed. My parents were like, you've got a problem. Dad was bringing me to an AA meeting out there in New York. And I had to duck out. Okay, I got to go drop off my dry cleaning. Before we go, I got to go do something, And what that something was, obviously, was going to the liquor store and getting a handful of little minis of vodka so that
we called them airplane bottles. And somebody, I'd been sober a long time when I heard nobody buys those except alcoholics.
Well,
like,
yeah.
that is so true. You see them in every parking lot on the ground. And,
Oh, yeah.
Who needs an ounce of whiskey so bad that they'll pay $5 for it and sneak it on the way into someplace?
Yeah.
Just us. Nobody
Just
else.
us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I had to get a good little buzz on to go to this AA meeting, and I barely remember it. But yeah.
Do you identify as an alcoholic there?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
There.
Oh, no, not yet. Not at the time. At that meeting, no, I did not.
Okay.
It took a few days, but what wound up happening is we were supposed to go out to dinner, and I got destroyed. My mom and I were supposed to go out to dinner, and I just passed out drunk, and I woke up at, I don't know, midnight, and my best friend, Allison, one of my many best friends out there in New York, I'd also gone to college with her. I woke up and saw her talking to my mom in the kitchen, my kitchen of my apartment. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And then I passed back out, and I woke up in the morning, and the intervention had already sort of been put in motion, and my mom had gotten a game plan together, and she bought 2 tickets, to come back here to New Mexico for later that day. It was like a 2 p.m. flight. I woke up at, I don't know, 9 in the morning.
Buddy, that's great. That's the way to do it, yeah.
And my mom says, hey, look, we're going back to New Mexico. You're coming with me. If you don't come, like, you don't have to come. But if you don't come, like, I'm worried I'll never see you again. And I think what she meant was, well, what I thought she meant was she's going to disown me if I don't come. That's how I took it. But what she really meant is I'm worried you're going to die.
Sure.
And I that was a very real concern. And at the time, dying of drinking too much, like, that doesn't happen. I mean, my thinking around that was very limited. I didn't realize that
sure
my health was that, at risk. But so I got on this plane with my mom, and my whole thinking was, okay, look, I'll go to New Mexico for like 2-3 days or whatever she wants. And I'll be, I'll be a good boy.
I got a couple hours to kill. I'll go get sober.
Yeah, I'll make it. I'll show that I don't have a problem. I'll jump through your hoops, and I'll be a good boy, and I'll behave, and and then I can come back to New York and continue self-destructing behind your backs the way I really want to.
Okay.
I don't know. My mom had my phone. My mom had my wallet. Nothing. I had no contact with the outside world. None of my New York friends knew I was gone. It was just weird. I just sort of like disappeared from New York.
Well, the reason I kind of said, that's great, when you said get on a plane to New Mexico, I have a friend in the field who's worked in rehabs forever. You talk about seeing him come, seeing him go by the million.
Yeah.
And so he's got a very gallows take on
yeah.
He's a lovely guy. He's fun. We're pals, but he's he knows what he's talking about, and he does not soft pedal the news. And he said for an intervention to work, you want to get pulled out of, you want to have no options, no friends, no car, get sent to a place you don't live, and pull up the ladder after you and focus for a month. So
yeah. So I was very resentful of my mom. I felt
sure.
I found a way to take it to like I was being treated like a little kid and not an adult. Of course, and for those of us who are listening to this, maybe this is sort of a channel for those of us in recovery or those of us curious about recovery, but I think, a lot of people who hear me say that will get it, but it was just sort of, I was a victim. I was a victim. How dare you do this to me? And, my field of vision around my self-destruction, the disease is so powerful and is such that it won't let you see what's really going on, and that's how you survive it. Into it getting worse. You live long. you can't see how awful you're being. You can't see how destructive you're being.
Oh, sure.
You have to blind yourself to all of that.
Yeah.
In order to justify, I need a drink, and you're addicted to it, so you need it, or else you'll get the shakes, or else whatever will happen. But your brain justifies it. No, you deserve it, or oh, you had a hard day, or oh, you had a great day, and really sitting still for a couple days in New Mexico outside of my comfort zone, and really being confronted with some of the behaviors and
were you in a rehab? Where were you?
No, I was just at my mom and dad's house.
I see.
My dad was saying, hey, look, if you want to go to treatment, it was the best thing I ever did, and I think you should really consider it. And my mom and dad were sort of making a good case for why I should go to rehab. My dad had gone, and it wound up ultimately being one of the best decisions for him. I kept sort of saying, that was him, but I'm different, and I don't have a problem. And, one of my other best friends, Gwen, flew out to New Mexico from New York to just be with me at this, really hard time.
That's a real friend.
It's a real friend. And I was going to AA meetings with my dad at 7 a.m. And on that third day in New Mexico, I had a seizure due to alcohol withdrawal. At the Friendship Club in Santa Fe, New Mexico, surrounded by a bunch of alcoholics
Son of a bitch.
that knew exactly what it was. And I got rushed to a hospital in an ambulance. I don't remember the ambulance ride, but I remember when the seizure was setting on. I remember trying to talk and the words not being weren't forming. And I remember being aware that I couldn't talk. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Not to, just a quick interruption. This is a guy who can do Shakespeare with one arm tied. So for his mouth to not be able to function, that's like Fred Astaire going, and I couldn't walk across the room. So just to say,
Thank
give
you.
a context.
Yeah, terrifying. And I remember coming to in the ambulance. I remember getting admitted to the hospital. And then I spent about 6 days at the Sobering Center, which is a state-funded sort of detox center.
It's kind of like Promises Malibu, only different.
Little different, I would imagine. No ocean view. It was a wonderful.
No omelet station.
No.
Okay.
No yoga classes. It's cinder block walls and a bunch of people on benzos. For a week, trying to come off of very hard drugs, and it was a very, very dark week. I've returned several times to speak at AA meetings that they bring in there, and I'm happy for the service, but I don't like being back in there because it was my absolute spiritual bottom that I was in when I had my stay there, and I got out, and my friend Gwen had flown out, and
When is this, Geoff?
This was 2014. This was March of 2014.
Okay. It's about the time I met you, I guess, yeah?
Yeah. You met me a few months later. So I had decided after getting out of the sobering center, okay, I'll go to treatment. And I told my dad, yes, I'll go. And I wound up going to treatment and staying as long as I could. Freaking loved it, actually. I had a blast in treatment.
Right. Here. Me too.
Yeah. I got there with,
Sober living afterwards, I hated, but the inpatient rehab in L.A., I'm still friends with those people.
Yeah, me too. And I was surrounded by, a bunch of people in the same boat, all very smart, very funny, very clever people that had just had these lives that were crumbling down around them and in ashes and flames, just like myself. But we were removed from it in this rehab setting, and we could focus on our recovery, and it was a very magical experience for me.
So how soon did you get back into theater?
It took me, so I got out of treatment that summer, moved back with mom and dad. I decided going back to New York would be a mistake. And I, to my parents' credit, I would like to say that, they did not pressure me to, move back to New Mexico to be with them. I didn't know New Mexico. They had moved here. I had never lived here before.
Dude, I couldn't have found it on a map until I lived here.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But I made that decision for myself. Like I should stay with mom and dad. My dad's in recovery. I don't have all my drug dealer friends that I'm bumping into on the street. I don't have the liquor stores. I don't have all the negative triggers, so I decided to come back here for what I thought would be a month or 2 or 3, and never left,
Land of Entrapment. I'm on the same program.
Yeah, so I did my first play here about a year after I got out of treatment.
Did I see it? What was it?
You did not see it. It was a play called Salome's Dance, written and directed by a woman named Deborah Dennison. She's brilliant, amazing, smart, incredibly wise and knowledgeable historian and playwright and director. And
a big brain.
A big brain, yeah. And so it was fun to get back involved with being on stage again. And honestly, that was really hard, because I was used to being able to go get a drink after the show. And, this was my first experience on stage.
Yeah.
And, I had sort of said this one play, Rabbit Hole in California, I was drunk on stage a couple times. Not proud of that. But that wasn't my norm, So alcohol in my system while performing wasn't a need.
Gotcha.
But going out on stage without having had a drink the night before even, or I don't know, it was just... it was a level of vulnerability that I wasn't expecting it to be. It was very hard.
Okay.
You know
where I'm headed, though. Actors are at their most interesting when they're vulnerable. So I'm not being a square going, well, you got to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and do some exercise in the morning and eat wheat germ to be a good actor. That is not what I'm saying. But when you're vulnerable, that's the magic. People can unconsciously absorb that, and I'm telling you, but you what do you think of that? I
agree with that wholeheartedly. I also think there's a level of self-esteem and confidence that is necessary to allow, as an actor, oneself to go to that place of vulnerability and trust that that's the right place that you need to take a role. And it's a vulnerability about the character, and it's a vulnerability about connecting to emotions that are scary to explore in front of an audience. But my vulnerability this night wasn't that strong, artistic vulnerability. It was I'm an addict, and I'm worried that people are going to not like me. I'm embarrassed about who I am.
Sure.
Early recovery was a very hard period. Not as hard as the last year of drinking was, but it was
very raw.
Yeah, so the vulnerability was more self-centered. Am I, as Geoff, being liked? I'm nervous that I am not cool. It was sort of that stuff, self-aware, self-absorbed, narcissistic almost, driven vulnerability. Not the kind I think that you're referring to, which is the artistic, brave kind, which I
this is pretty interesting stuff, Geoff. This is subtle.
It's a great question, and great question. So yeah, I mean,
you've been acting decades at a high level. People hire you all the time.
As have you, by the way. This guy Sherman.
No, thank you. I was not. My point is, if you've been fixing cars for 20 years and you get paid for fixing cars, you get pretty damn good at fixing cars, and it brings a craftsman calm to the gig. You know the gig.
Yeah.
If things go according to oil, it's going to be fine one way or the other. You're aiming higher than that. I mean, when you've got the lead in a Shakespeare production, it's not for chumps. So where does one leave off and the other begin of, I know how to work at my craft. I know how many hours it takes to do this and that, and I know my system. But then you're there under the lights with a bunch of eyes and ears and beating hearts watching you talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, now that I've got almost 9 years sober, a lot of that, shame of, I'm not ashamed of being in recovery. I'm not ashamed of being an alcoholic. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. I wouldn't trade my dark past for anything.
Yeah.
That's my feeling now of my recovery. Someone asks why I don't drink, I'll proudly say I'm in recovery, and it's awesome. I'll think twice about who I say it to, just because sometimes people do sort of like, oh, that's weird. Like, are you going to have a relapse in front of me one day? And should I be worried? So it's like,
One of my best friends I was house sitting for, I'm 25 years sober at the time. We're pals. This is one of my closest friends, but he's not in recovery. He's a normie. And I'm house sitting, and he said, do I need to get rid of the liquor around here? I'm like, homie, yeah. I'm at this 25 years.
Yeah.
I've been in a gas station that sells beer before in the last quarter century. Normal people should not understand what we do. But it would take four guys your size to hold me down and pour some of that stuff down my throat. I'm not jonesing when I'm in the gas station later on today.
And, so other people who are not in recovery, their experience with or their understanding of what it is we do in recovery is going to change from person to person. And some people have a clearer idea than others. And oftentimes it takes, they would have had to have had a family member or a friend that, I had
a pal, like a bicycling next door neighbor. We were pals. And once in a while he'd be having a pop on Friday night and he'd go, man, I sure wish you could have a drink with me. I'm like, man, you sure do not.
No, you don't. Yeah. You say that now.
I'm not normal.
Yeah.
I'm like Kim Basinger Blind Dates. Like, you really don't start that engine.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. So, but earlier on, I guess to answer your question, I was so ashamed of who I was. Like, I had spent a lot of time as a kid promising myself I'm not going to grow up to be an alcoholic. I can't. Because I grew up in an alcoholic household. And then it finally happened.
How old were you when your dad got into recovery?
Well, he started dabbling in recovery when I was, 20, 21.
Oh, okay. You're a young man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
But
wow.
I remember it being a problem back when I was, 8 or 9 years old.
Of course.
The funny thing is I very likely could have been born an alcoholic, and I actually kind of do think maybe I was. Not that really matters, because what matters is whether or not I am, not how it happened.
You Irish?
I am not. I'm not Irish. I'm Lithuanian and French.
They say, the people that study these things, that if you're American Indian or Irish like me, you got it.
Yeah.
But that little thing hanging off one of the genomes.
Yeah.
That's the mark of somebody. What they call it is high propensity to addiction. So in other words, if you and I grew up in Saudi Arabia where liquor does not exist, we'd be hooked on hashish or whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Or caffeine or whatever.
My degree is in fine arts, not medicine, but that's something that I've heard said.
Yeah.
Every fellow potato eater I know has a problem or is right on the
cusp or yeah.
You can tell they got it.
Yeah.
And the thinking too. I think there's something besides the fact that you and I can't say no to a fourth glass of anything. Our thinking's not like the other little boys and girls. I believe that. I think we're different.
Oh, 100%. And I can track that back to my childhood, even before I ever had a drink. I can track it back to my escapism, my and walking to school and being half an hour late, even though I live 10 feet from the front doorstep of the principal's office. I literally lived around the corner, like a quarter mile from school.
Me too.
5-minute walk. It would take me 20 minutes because I'm like off in my own little wonderland, ADHD kind of like kid, like fantasizing, playing Indiana Jones in the trees. And like, I don't know. My mom followed me one day. I guess I don't remember this story actually happening, but I've heard it retold hundreds of times where, she got a call from the principal, like, your kid is always late for school. She's like, well, he's leaving at, 20 minutes till, and it only takes 5 minutes to get there. What's he doing? So she followed me on my walk, and I'm like noodling around and climbing trees and talking to the cats, the neighborhood cats, like, hey, kitty, 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 like petting the cats. And I don't know, I just was never present. I always wanted to check out in some way. I was always watching too much TV. I was always, I don't know. And then the thoughts of I'm less than, for some reason, I don't know why, started creeping in when I was about 12, 13. I'm just less than. I don't know why I feel that way, but I know I'm different than everybody, and it's a less than different. But
that also manifests as that mysterious thing, acting talent.
Say that again? Or say that a different...
Acting talent's a kind of a weird thing. It's pretty easy to see if somebody can throw a ball 50 yards or not, and so on. Acting's a little more woo-woo than that.
Yes.
And you've got it.
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm... It's an observation. It's a professional observation, and it's got to be tied in with what you just described.
Yeah, I think it all ties in, and I think, and again, I wouldn't trade any of that for the world either. And I almost failed out of high school. I'm a pretty bright guy, but I almost didn't graduate. Actually, this play I did when I said it was my senior year of high school. It was actually a 5th year of high school that I had to do at a boarding school because I was gonna fail out of public high school. Okay,
3rd grade was the worst 4 years of your life.
Exactly, man. That's me.
And you drilled Edmund the Bastard's son like a boss. So
well, yeah,
it's not about IQ or
no,
any
it's
of
not.
that stuff.
And I just learned differently. And I was at a big public high school where my teachers didn't understand how to, teach a kid like me the material. They knew how to teach in standardized ways. And and if you don't learn this way, then that's proof that you're stupid, and that's what messaging I actually got, and that's what I was actually told. And so I actually believed it, and I thought, well, I must be stupid, so why am I even trying, spending all these hours reading Wuthering Heights or whatever the book was we had to read, All Quiet on the Western Front. I'm not going to spend a month reading that book when I know I'm not going to pass the test if I read it, so I might as well just have a bunch more free time and not read it. I'm going to fail anyway, so I might as well just go make home movies. And that was my thinking. And it took being diagnosed with learning disabilities a month before I graduated high school, before I thought, oh, I'm not stupid. Oh, I'm actually really smart, because there's an IQ test as part of that. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is weird. I just learned differently, so maybe I should just go to a different school that specializes in kids that learn like me. And so that went pretty well for me.
Wow. Is there a teacher that you owe a lot to in that time?
Oh, man. Andy Campbell. Andy, God, everyone at that boarding school that I went to.
Where?
Everyone. That was up in New Hampshire, Brewster Academy, and had a wonderful experience there. But yeah.
But that was some years before sobriety.
Whoa, long before.
Yeah.
Long before.
So I feel confident in saying that recovery, being sober, is a huge, huge deal for you.
Yes.
I know for a fact that living a creative life, the artist life, is your heart.
Yes.
What do you want to say about where those roads intersect or whatever?
Okay. Well, what I will say is you don't need to drink or use to create. And part of the myth that I had told myself, and I've heard this dozens and dozens of times in the rooms at meetings. I thought that I needed to get loaded to write my best material or to paint my best painting or to, I think that's a common justification, and it's just not true. My experience in getting sober was there's a relearning process to how to connect to your artistic side. Now that alcohol or drugs are not in your system or in your life, you sort of have to relearn how to ride the bike again. You sort of have to relearn how to do a lot of things when you're in early recovery. But I think addicts and alcoholics are often very artistic people, and I think it's a common thing. And I'm much happier being the guy that has accountability and shows up on time for stuff. I say that as a joke because I was an hour late to this interview. But I think it's a very common thing that people, addicts and alcoholics, are artistic, and it's just a lot better this way. And I think this way, being sober and in recovery, and I do feel I'm growing faster as an artist in recovery than I ever did when I was drinking, even before the drinking got out of hand. I just sort of think taking classes on weekends or taking classes during the week and drinking on the weekend, that somehow slowed my progress. Even before it was problematic, it just was a wet blanket over me even before it became a problem.
Wet blanket. That's a good description.
I sort of forget the question now, but the other two I think are very tied. Artistic personalities and addictive personalities, and I'm every bit as passionate and brave, or I connect to the emotion of a scene, that I'm playing clearer and stronger than I ever have. And I just think recovery is such a gift for the artistic side for me. They're very linked. And the work we do in recovery and the looking at ourselves that we do if we're working our program opens the doors to an emotional awareness that I never had before. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah. It's just like...
Well, and you get older. If you don't drink and you don't die, you get more years of sobriety. And if you're doing it right, it deepens everything.
Everything. Yeah. And that fuels everything,
As I don't want to blow his anonymity, but he was the drummer for the Beatles. And he says that time takes time. And my guest today has been the wonderful Geoff P. And I want to thank the Friendship Club of Santa Fe for the use of their facilities. And I want to thank you for listening, and please come back.
Thanks, Sherman.